My family made me pay for college while my sister got everything. Years later, they hired me for her wedding and sat me at the worst table. So I canceled the service mid-reception and left them without DJ, food, and coordinator. I'm 31 years old. I work in event planning. And I need to tell this story because what happened like 3 months ago at my sister's wedding basically finished breaking what little was left of my relationship with my family. And honestly, I don't regret it one bit. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was 15 and my mom died of cancer. I'm not going to get into all the details because it's still hard for me to talk about. But what I can say is that it was fast. Like 6 months from diagnosis to when she passed. And my sister Chloe was like 12 at the time. It was just the three of us. My dad, Chloe, and me. And honestly, I thought we were going to bond more after that. You know, like those families that come out stronger from tragedies. Well, no, not at all. My dad met Marilyn like a year after my mom died. And at first I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt because, I understand he was lonely and needed to move on with his life. But the thing is, Marilyn was, and still is, one of the most manipulative and controlling people I've ever met in my life. Seriously, from the moment she moved into our house, she started erasing any trace of my mom. The photos we had in the living room, they disappeared. The special dishes my mom collected, she donated them without asking us. Even my mom's apple pie recipe that was stuck on the fridge, one day it just wasn't there anymore. When I asked my dad about it, he just said Marilyn was trying to make the house more hers, that it was normal, that I should be more understanding. Understanding. Can you believe it? I was 16 years old, and I was supposed to be understanding with the woman who was erasing my mom from our lives. The thing is, Chloe, my sister, adapted way faster than me. I don't know if it was because she was younger or because she simply needed a mother figure, but she basically adopted Marilyn as her new mom almost immediately. And Marilyn, of course, adored her. She bought her expensive clothes, took her to get her nails done, they organized spa days together, all that stuff. Meanwhile, I was basically invisible. It's not that they completely ignored me, but there was definitely a difference in how they treated me versus how they treated Chloe. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there. But I was so focused on finishing high school and getting out of that house that I just endured it. The real problem started when it came time to go to college. I had worked like crazy during all of high school. I had good grades, I had done extracurricular activities, the whole package. I was accepted to a pretty decent university. Nothing super prestigious, but it was a good business program, which was what I wanted to study. When I told my dad I needed help with tuition, because that's what parents do, right? I sat down with him in the kitchen one Sunday morning. You remember, Marilyn was making pancakes. Random detail, but I remember it perfectly. And he basically told me he didn't have the money to help me, that I was already an adult and needed to learn to fend for myself, that he hadn't had help from anyone and I didn't need it either. What really hurt me, and to this day my blood boils when I think about this, is that literally 3 years later, when Chloe was accepted to a super expensive private university, my dad and Marilyn not only paid her full tuition, but they also bought her a new car, paid for an apartment near campus, and gave her a monthly allowance that was more than what I was earning, working part-time at that moment. But of course, when I confronted my dad about it, he told me the economic situation had improved, that Marilyn was also contributing money now, that I shouldn't be resentful. Resentful. He used that word a lot with me. So I had to pay for my university completely on my own. I worked 2 jobs during the first 2 years, then I got a better job at an events company, and that's where I found my true passion. Turns out, I'm pretty good at organizing things, coordinating people, handling last-minute crises, all that stuff you need for successful events. I graduated with a bit of debt, but nothing terrible. Got a full-time job at the same company where I had been doing my internship, and after like 3 years there, I decided to launch my own event planning business. I was 26 when I did it, and it was terrifying but also exciting. During all this time, my relationship with my family was basically non-existent. I went to Christmas dinners out of obligation, called my dad on his birthday, that kind of thing, but there was no real connection. Chloe and I practically didn't talk. She was in her world of private university and fraternity parties, and I was building my business from scratch. My dad never asked how I was doing with work, never showed interest in what I was doing. Marilyn was openly hostile, always making passive-aggressive comments about how I was wasting my education on doing parties, as if planning corporate events and luxury weddings was something unimportant. The truth is that by the time I was 28, I had basically cut ties with them. It wasn't a dramatic decision with a big fight or anything like that. I just stopped going to family dinners, stopped answering messages that weren't absolutely necessary, and focused all my energy on my business. And let me tell you, my business started to really take off. I hired Angela as my operations manager. She's incredible. Literally don't know what I'd do without her. We expanded our team, started doing bigger and more prestigious events. In 3 years, we went from being a small operation to having contracts with major companies and weddings with 6-figure budgets. So, fast forward to like 4 months ago. I receive a wedding invitation in the mail. I open it, and it's from Chloe. My first reaction was to throw it in the trash, honestly. But there was a handwritten note inside that said, "Isaac, I know I've been distant, but you're my brother, and I've missed you so much. Please come to my wedding. It would mean the world to me." And look, I'm not going to lie. That touched me a little. Part of me, that stupid sentimental part that still remembered when Chloe was my little sister and we played together before Mom died, that part wanted to believe that maybe she really missed me and this could be an opportunity to reconnect. I sent her a text, congratulating her and telling her I'd go. She responded super excited, with like 3 heart emojis and everything. Then I offered her, because that's how I am, to help her with the wedding planning. I told her my company could give her a significant family discount, and that we'd love to be part of her special day. Her response was, "Thanks, but Marilyn already took care of everything. We already have everything contracted." Something about that response bothered me, but I let it go. I should have investigated more, but I was busy with other events and honestly didn't think much about it. The wedding day arrived. I bought myself a new suit. Nothing too fancy, but definitely not cheap. It cost me like $800. I arrived at the ceremony, which was nice, very traditional, at a pretty church. I saw my dad and Marilyn in the first row, obviously, and they saw me but just nodded, no smile or anything. During the cocktail hour before the reception, I tried to approach Chloe to congratulate her personally, but she was surrounded by people, and I could barely give her a quick hug before Marilyn literally pulled her away to introduce her to other people. The reception was at this super elegant venue, like a luxury event hall with high ceilings and giant chandeliers. When I entered, I started looking for my table. The table numbers were at the entrance, the typical alphabetical list where you find your name and it tells you which table you're sitting at. I find my name and it says, Table 14. Table 14. You know what I mean? I look at the floor plan, and Table 14 is literally in the farthest corner of the main hall, near the kitchen, basically as far as possible from the main table where the newlyweds and families were. I sat there with a bunch of people I barely knew, like third cousins I hadn't seen in years, and friends of Marilyn's family I didn't even know existed. Things got worse when my dad, who by this point had already had like 3 or 4 drinks too many, my dad has always had problems with alcohol, but that night he was especially drunk, approached my table. He stood behind me, put his hand on my shoulder in a way that wasn't friendly at all, and said loudly, loud enough for everyone at my table to hear, "Look who decided to show up. The successful businessman? Kids' birthday parties must be paying well these days." I froze. The people at my table went silent, like that uncomfortable silence where everyone pretends they didn't hear anything but obviously everyone heard. My dad laughed, squeezed my shoulder hard, and left. Like 20 minutes later, Marilyn approached. She was wearing this super ostentatious gold dress that probably cost more than my rent for 3 months, and had that fake smile she always put on when she was going to say something hurtful but wanted to make it seem like a joke. She leaned toward me and said, "Isaac, I love your suit. Is it rented?" And when I told her no, that I had bought it, she said, "Oh, that's good. I guess planning little parties must have its benefits." Then she added, "It's a shame Chloe couldn't use your services, but we wanted something more professional, more elegant, something up to the occasion. We needed people with real experience." At that moment, I was trying to keep my composure because, I was at my sister's wedding and didn't want to cause a scene, but I was furious. Literally felt like my face was burning. But then, something happened that changed everything. One of the waiters approached my table, and I heard when he asked someone on staff if they knew where the event manager was. He mentioned something about a problem with the audio and that they needed someone from the production team. And that's when I heard him mention the name of my company. My company. My damn company was in charge of this wedding. I got up immediately and followed the waiter. I got to the area where the technical team was, and there was Angela, my operations manager, coordinating something with the sound team. When she saw me, her face was total shock. She said, "Isaac, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were going to be at this event." And that's when everything clicked. I asked her who had contracted our services, and she told me it had been through Marilyn. But the contract was under the name of the groom's parents for payment. That she had never seen my name anywhere in the documents because Marilyn had specifically handled all communications and had asked to keep everything confidential for security reasons, which wasn't that unusual in weddings of people with money. It took me like 2 seconds to process everything. Marilyn had contracted my company, knowing perfectly well it was mine, and hadn't told me anything. Neither she nor Chloe had told me that my own company was going to be working at this wedding. And not only that, they had insulted me all night. They had specifically mentioned they didn't want my services because they weren't good enough, when literally my team was there doing all the work. The hypocrisy was so huge, I almost started laughing right there. But instead, I did something better. I asked Angela to bring me a copy of the contract. She went to her folder, took out the documents, and there it was, in small print but completely legal. The clause that I personally had insisted on, including in all our contracts after a couple of bad experiences in the past. The clause said, "We reserve the right to terminate services immediately, without refund, if any team member experienced hostile, discriminatory, or abusive behavior from the client or their guests." We had to document it, of course, and give formal notice. But basically, it protected us from situations exactly like this. I took out my phone and sent Angela a message asking her to discreetly record what I was about to do, and also to check if the venue's security cameras had captured the interactions I'd had with my dad and Marilyn. Then I walked back to the hall, approached Marilyn, who was at the bar having a glass of wine, and told her in a calm voice that I needed to talk to her outside. She rolled her eyes but followed me. Once outside, where there were fewer people, I told her very clearly, "Marilyn, I just found out that my company is the one handling this event." She went pale for a second, but then tried to compose herself and said, "Well, yes, they're good at what they do, I suppose, but we didn't want you to think we were doing you any favors." I said, "I understand, but I need you to know that due to the comments that both you and my father have made tonight, comments that have been documented and that constitute discriminatory and hostile behavior toward a service team member, I'm invoking the immediate termination clause of the contract." Her face was like not understanding anything at all for like 5 seconds. Then she started processing it and said, "Wait, what? You can't do that. We're in the middle of the reception." I said, "Yes, I can, and I'm going to do it. It's all in the contract you signed. Maybe you should have read it more carefully." She started screaming, literally screaming at the entrance of the venue, saying I was resentful, that I'd always been a problem, that I was ruining my sister's wedding out of pure spite. I told her, "I'm not ruining anything out of spite. I'm exercising a legitimate contractual right based on your behavior and my father's. And frankly, after years of trying to be good enough for you guys, it's liberating to finally be able to say no, that I'm not going to accept your mistreatment anymore." Then I took out a card from my pocket, my lawyer's card, handed it to her and said, "Any questions about the contract or termination terms can be directed to him." I went back inside the venue, gave Angela a signal, and in the next 30 minutes, my team, in a completely professional manner, started dismantling everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. The special lights we had installed, the floral decorations we had coordinated with the florist, the complete sound system, the screens to project the couple's photos, everything. My team did it so efficiently and professionally that by the time people started noticing what was happening, we already had like 60% of the equipment packed in the trucks. The guests started murmuring. Chloe noticed and came running toward me asking what was happening. But I was already in completely professional mode, not brother mode. I briefly explained to her that we had terminated our services due to contract violations and that any questions should be directed to my lawyer. She started crying, saying she didn't understand. How could I do this to her on her special day? And look, part of me felt bad seeing her cry. I'm not going to lie. But the bigger part of me, the part that had carried years of being treated like trash by this family, that part felt nothing. I told her, Chloe, you had 7 years to contact me, to ask me how I was doing, to be a real sister, and the only thing you did was send me an invitation when you needed to fill a chair. So no, don't come at me now saying I'm ruining your special day. I left the venue with my team. Angela was worried this could affect the business, but I told her we had everything documented, that we had followed the contract to the letter, and that frankly, if this cost us some clients, it was worth it. I got home around 11 at night, poured myself a whiskey. You don't drink much, but that night I needed one, and checked my phone. I had like 15 messages from Marilyn, all basically telling me I was a horrible person, that I had ruined the most important day of Chloe's life, that she would never forgive me. My dad left me 3 voicemails, all drunk, yelling and threatening me with I don't know what things. But the message that really affected me was from Chloe. It was a long text, sent around midnight, where she basically said she couldn't believe I had been so selfish, that she had always known I was resentful but never thought I would go that far. That Marilyn had been right about me all this time. She didn't even mention anything about how she or my dad or Marilyn had treated me. It was all about how I had ruined her wedding, how I had been cruel, how I had shown my true face. I read it like 3 times, trying to find at least one sentence where she acknowledged any of what they had done to me, but there was nothing. The following days were interesting. Marilyn apparently told the entire extended family her version of the story, where I was the psychopath villain who had sabotaged my sister's wedding for no reason. She even posted a fake review online about my company, saying we were unprofessional and had abandoned an event without notice. Angela handled that incredibly well, contacted the platform with evidence that the review was false and malicious, and they removed it in 2 days. The crazy thing is, we also started receiving calls from people who had been at the wedding. Turns out several of the guests were business people, or were in positions where they organized corporate events, and they had been so impressed with my team's professionalism during the whole situation that they wanted to hire us. One of them literally told me on a call, if your team can maintain that composure under those circumstances, they're definitely the people I want handling my events. We ended up getting like 5 new contracts from that wedding, each one for more than what I had originally charged for Chloe's services. Like 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a letter from a lawyer. It was from Marilyn and my dad, threatening to sue me for breach of contract and for emotional damages. Basically, they wanted me to pay them the full cost of the service they had contracted, plus damages for ruining the wedding. My lawyer almost laughed when I showed him the letter. We prepared a response with all our documentation, the contract with the clause clearly marked. The security recordings from the venue showing the interactions with my dad and Marilyn, testimonies from staff members who had witnessed the comments, everything. We sent them such a complete package that their lawyer basically told them they had no case and that if they moved forward, they'd probably end up owing more money in legal costs. Like another month passed and I received a call from Joseph, Chloe's husband. I had never talked much with him before the wedding, but he seemed like a decent guy. He told me Chloe wanted to talk to me, that she felt terrible about how things had turned out, that she had been thinking a lot about everything. Part of me didn't want to meet with her, but another part, that part that still remembered when we were kids, thought that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something better. I agreed to meet her at a neutral cafe, far from any place where Marilyn or my dad could be. I arrived at the cafe like 15 minutes early because I'm that neurotic about punctuality. Ordered a coffee and sat at a table in the back. Chloe arrived exactly on time. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. We sat down and there was an uncomfortable silence for a few seconds before she started talking. She said she had been thinking a lot about what happened, that she understood I was angry, but she didn't understand why I had chosen her wedding to make a statement. Those were her exact words. Make a statement. I told her, Chloe, it wasn't making a statement. I was exercising a contractual right after being insulted and degraded by your family, by our family, supposedly, at an event where I should have been an honored guest, but instead I was treated like trash. She said she understood things had been difficult, but that I had taken things too far, that there was a more mature way to handle the situation. I asked her what mature way would have been appropriate according to her, and she didn't know what to answer. Then I asked her directly, Chloe, did you ever wonder why Dad didn't help me with college but paid for everything for you? Why Marilyn treats you like a daughter but always treated me like a nuisance? Why in 7 years you never called or wrote to see how I was doing? She was quiet for a moment and then said, Well, you were the one who pulled away. You were the one who decided not to be part of the family. And there I saw it clearly. She really believed that. She really thought I had been the problem all along. I told her, You know what? You're right. I pulled away. But I pulled away because staying meant accepting a level of mistreatment I was no longer willing to tolerate. You chose to stay. You chose to be the favorite. You chose to ignore how they treated me because it was convenient for you. And now you're angry because I finally set a boundary. She started crying, but they were tears of frustration more than real sadness. And she said, I had always been like that, always the resentful one, always playing the victim. At that moment, something broke in me definitively. I got up, took out a $20 bill, put it on the table to pay for the coffees, and told her, Chloe, I hope you have a happy life with Joseph. I hope Marilyn and Dad continue to be everything you need in a family, because I'm no longer going to be available to be your emotional punching bag or your guilty conscience. I don't wish you anything bad, but I also don't want anything to do with you. And I left. Since that day, I haven't spoken to any of them. I blocked Marilyn and my dad's numbers, blocked Chloe on all social media, basically erased them from my life completely. And you know what? My business is better than ever. We just signed a contract to handle a series of corporate events for a Fortune 500 company. We're hiring more staff. We're even considering opening a second office in another city. Angela keeps telling me it was the most incredible power move she's ever seen in her life. And honestly, even though in the moment it was terrifying and stressful, looking back I wouldn't change anything. Do I feel guilty sometimes? Sure. There are moments, especially late at night when I can't sleep, where I wonder if I went too far, if I should have handled things differently. But then I remember all those years where I tried to be enough for them, where I worked twice as hard to prove my worth, where I accepted their insults and contempt because I thought eventually they would see what I was, worth. And I realized that no, I didn't go too far. I finally went far enough to protect myself. Last week, I was coordinating a charity gala event, one of those elegant events with minor celebrities and rich people donating money for some cause. And one of the guests approached me afterwards and told me my company had handled everything impeccably, that she had never seen such a well-coordinated event. She asked me how I had learned to stay calm under pressure, and I almost laughed because I thought about that night at Chloe's wedding. I told her I had a lot of practice with difficult situations and left it at that. She gave me her card and said she would definitely contact us for future events. Driving home that night, I put loud music in the car and allowed myself to feel proud of what I've built. Not with my family's help, not with their approval, but completely on my own. And yes, maybe I'm selfish for feeling satisfaction in that, but after so many years of being put down, I think I've earned the right to be proud. My mom, wherever she is, I hope she's proud too. She always told me when I was a kid that I was special, that I could do anything I set my mind to. I wish she had lived to see she was right,